Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Peter Donné. I'm the first and only Belgian internationally licensed post-hardcore rock vocalist. That's a huge kind of wording. Most people don't know me really personally in the UK, so I'm giving a short intro, just a short one, so you know something about my background. I was born in Ghent, which is my hometown, on the 25th of July, 1966. As far as music concerned, I had a classical background. I sang a whole lot of years in classical church choir. But then afterwards, when I was unable to find any decent employ, I started to listen to contemporary rock music. That was about 2013, and I was really delighted with my classical background. I was very happy to recognize several vocal skills which could match with my personal background as a singer. So I started studying contemporary rock music. As you all know, in UK in Nottingham, I started foremost and first listening to Black Veil Bride, which had some nice soft songs, easy to learn, easy to sing. Further on, I met, which up until now is very important to me as a rock vocalist, Breaking Benjamin. It made quite a particular impression on me as a singer, and I started studying the lyrics, started studying the band, the history of the band, and started to sing. To upgrade my vocal skills. And in the meantime, being unemployed, I started studying contemporary, that is post-hardcore rock music, to get some more insight in which skills I would have to be able to use whenever it was necessary. So what happened then, I started exploring a number of contemporary rock bands. So I sang Black Veil Brides, I sang Breaking Benjamin, Escape the Fates, and before that, A Day to Remember. So there's some range of style within post-hardcore rock music I definitely did like. A number of you can testify what is my way of singing, as I have been singing Breaking Benjamin in Nottingham and Nottingham Forest grounds, to be more precise, and time and again also in Nottingham Town Square, which was nice to do. It was a manner of exploring live post-hardcore rock singing. So that was in Nottingham, UK, 2014. I came back afterwards, and you also know me as a nobleman with a liberal background. But as of now, I am no longer active, not in politics as such, and I never really was actually engaged in politics. Neither in any kind of activism. So for now, I have a standard YouTube license, an international license, to produce videos and whatever I think is apt to show the public what is possible. But I do want to stress there that the material you will find on my YouTube channel is elaborate over a span of about 2 years. You know, you will see there vids from 2015, and where my personal outlook, my appearance was totally different when I first started recording. And I had to learn a lot of things, you know. In between, in these 2 years, I had about 3 moves, which made it very difficult for my health to keep up with my vocalist skills, upgrading. But still, somehow I managed to do that. And so you can see over lapse of time, 2 years, 2 years of span, you can see how I evolved in my vocalizing on my YouTube channel, of which you have seen a number of videos. I think the major problem for me as a post-hardcore rock vocalist is, for one, in UK both, and in Belgium, Benelux, Western Europe, and its stage scene. Post-hardcore rock music is not really platformed as such. I think there's a problem with that. You have, of course, a classical hard rock, which is played everywhere, but it doesn't seem that post-hardcore rock is able to really set a foot on an active stage platform in Western Europe. I mean, in Belgium, in Holland, and in the UK, it's a lot better, happily. So that, as far as it goes, my rock vocalism. I have been trying to find a place in a band. It's not easy, as colleagues all know also, of course. So that's why I started putting these vids on YouTube. It's hard for a band to get in. Why? So people know why I keep being unemployed for now as a rock vocalist. First of all, you have to fit into a band, and each and every band has its own style, its own setting of musicians. And before any one of those musicians would drop out or get out of the band, that doesn't happen very easily, because it profoundly disturbs the balance of the band sound, of band live, etc. That's why it's not easy to get in any whatever existing band. Even when vacancies do get public, it remains quite a problem, as we have seen with AC/DC in past time also. Everyone knows about certain personal, I wouldn't call it problems. For me, there is not really a basic problem as such. You could call it my personal layering, you see. People who have known me in Nottingham have not really seen anything about me as a political person. I kept that in the background. Stressly, emphatically, I kept it in the background. But a number of people might have seen me also as a pagan person, a person who has a conviction, paganism for a conviction. I want to just make clear that I am not some kind of pagan priest or bishop or something, because stories have been told about that, and that's not really the truth that it is. You know, so that's just my conviction. there's no kind of function. So I want really these stories to be stopped. There's no whatever reality to that kind of stories. It is true, I have been quite active in the years before 2013 in LGBT activism, which is not so easy a thing. It demands a lot of energy, a lot of insight and knowledge. But I consciously stopped investing therein because I chose, once and for all, I chose to go into post-hardcore rock life, you see, because of my personal skills from childhood, from when I was a teen. So, whereas I have different layers in my personality, as everyone has, it is important for the larger public to stop accepting any focus which might over-sexualize me, which definitely has been the case in my past. A focus which has no whatsoever real context in it. So I really want to disoblige anyone stressing and keeping on branding any person to that one soul and only sexual layer. That's unfortunately, that's what happens, not only to me, it happens to, I won't compare, personally, not on a musical level, I won't compare with Ozzy, for example, but Ozzy and a lot of other rock vocalists are having and have had the same problem, that in public they have been slandered, they have been persecuted years on end, as I have been, and I still am isolated for that. And I think that's something we all have in common, or a lot of rock musicians have that basic experience also, because they just want to make sure you don't get anywhere, you see? And the cheapest and the most effective way is to slander people on whatever background they want to brand you in. And that's what really gets very easily into one's heart when they start slandering someone behind his back for whatever sexual context or other paparazzi context it may be. So that's just being out on destroying a person to the core, onto the core of his essence, you know, to make sure he never gets any whatever place on any whatever stage that possibly might be. I think it is, if everyone looks honestly and sincerely in, you know, in their own hearts, they know the persecution that has been mounted towards my person, as to other rock vocalists, because I'm very much aware I'm not at all the first or the only one having that kind of problem. But I would like to make clear that, you know, there's no sense in keeping on branding a person on whatever kind of layer it is, be it his conviction, be it his politics. You know, we came into rock music life to professionalize, to study music, to share, you know, to learn from other persons, musicians, cult persons, whatever, you know. And from the moment you are actively and consciously isolating somebody, not because of his vocal skills are bad, you know, not because he has no expertise, but just because someone is a person as he is, for what he is, you know. And that is what has been happening. I have been persecuted years on end, already before Antwerp 2013, actually, I've been persecuted. Whereas there is no whatsoever legal background to that persecution, but zero. There is nil background. There's only slandering, you know, which has been taken over by persons, which has been initiating a hate clan, just you know, making sure my person be kept isolated from any whatever platform. So that is really impossible. It's an impossible situation. It should not be maintained any whatever time longer, you know, because it makes it impossible to share musical experience. It makes it impossible, not only for me, also for other rock singers. It has been very difficult for Ronnie Radke in the United States, also very, very difficult. You know, it makes it impossible to get into a band. It makes it impossible to learn from one another, to evolve, except happily I have quite a decent background in musical skills, so I can help myself. But I never get opportunity to evolve within a band, within a musical staging context or a studio context, you see. So then the possibility of sharing keeps on being restricted. Apart from that, it is not nice to say, maybe. It's not easy to say neither. But as the saying goes, one never is a prophet in one's own land. And that most certainly goes for persons who have a very explicit personal layering. As I do have to admit I have, you know. So if I'm guilty on that, I don't think so, but that's just how I am. So that is what have been profiling me heavily abroad. Already before I became a rock vocalist, I already had a very, very expressive profile as an LGBT activist, amongst others, you know. So this very outstanding profile of mine internationally has obviously created a sphere where negativism starts whirling around that image, you know, not obliging and not able to oblige someone to evolve, to practice his talents, seen as a danger for other persons who want to profile and who basically can't. For whatever reason. That is also the reason why there have been so much problems for family and friends accepting me, not only as a post-hardcore rock vocalist with classical background and with rather expressive rock vocalist skills, you know. It's also about me being a nobleman of hereditary nobility. It's about me having been involved in a very restricted mode into a certain form of politics, which I want to be left out entirely for now. It is about, of course, my personal preferences in my personal dating life, etc. Once you keep focusing on consciously focusing and excluding all other layers of one's personality and over-focusing on that one focus you want the person to be in, that layer gets into footlight, and all the other images swirling around it in a negativism kind of world, keep in the dark. That has been making it very difficult to find, who's the real guilt from a part of that hate clan, etc. But just to come back on the prophet in its own land, obviously this is not easy for my family, who, let's put it as it is, it's not only about the family, it's also about friends, who knew me before, who knew me in Boy Scouting when I was a youth, etc., who knew me in school, sorry. So it's very difficult for them to accept that you have these talents. And that made the isolation where I still do live in diarrhea still more heavy. It has mounted up to state of affairs where I have been deprived of several human rights all along these years. I'm not going to go in depth for the reasons why, the consequences why. I just ask all over the UK, everyone who's watching and listening along, to realize that isolation is not productive for anyone. It is also disastrous for the people involved in this isolationist politics towards my person, as it has been in another way, in another form, for example, Ronnie Radke, who had these same problems on another level, in another manner. So people have to realize that the isolation I'm forced in has led to a constant multiple human rights violation situation. And people have been biting themselves into that ring of fire, isolating me, without any whatsoever possibility of person-to-person communication. If I had a real possibility to person-to-person talk with my rock vocalists colleagues, with any other person really involved, that could have never happened. You see, so I think everyone in that account has to take up his responsibility from low up onto high. Once the possibility, the capacity of communicating with the one who is in that isolated situation, you can get nowhere but antagonizing and polarizing situations where it is no longer possible to talk or to communicate, because people are blocked. They don't want to communicate because they don't want to solve the problem, which is reflective, because it's basically their own problem they are reflecting often on the isolated person. So, okay, this in short. So I think it's for a part it's logical that I'm a prophet, not a prophet in one's own country, but musically spoken, and this is somewhat different from the UK situation on the musical level. In Belgium and in Holland, it was always very difficult for a post-hardcore rock to set foot on land on the musical practice, you see, because the most people who listen rock here, or have been listening to rock here, adhere to hard rock, to heavy metal, to not only Black Sabbath but also really heavy metal, and so the regional rock cult has an entirely different experience and idea of what rock is like, what rock should be. That made it difficult for them to accept post-hardcore rock as a really separate, important staging form of rock, because in the States, back in the States, that's entirely different. There, post-hardcore rock is a very important genre of rock, very much so. Here in Europe, we don't. I'm not talking about the UK for now, because happily there it is different. It is different. But in Belgium and in Holland and other places, those who always have been listening to rock music, those who consider themselves rock cultures, cannot or have difficulties accepting bands like Black Veil Brides, like Breaking Benjamin, Escape the Fate, Falling in Reverse, to see them as rock bands, actually. So that makes the style I have been singing, which is Breaking Benjamin, Black Veil Brides, somewhat lesser, A Day to Remember, which I like very much. And then for my personal vocalist skills, Escape the Fate has been very important, next to Breaking Benjamin, and Falling in Reverse. So you see, that is a genre which is so weird, so out of their concept of what rock should be, that it is not generally accepted for a number of reasons, actually. That is why I'm not only very much alone, that's why I'm also the first and only post-hardcore rock vocalist for the whole of the Benelux, the only internationally licensed, standard YouTube licensed post-hardcore rock vocalist. So that's, about the context where I have been starting out in contemporary rock music life. There is a basic difference between me, also as a person, as a rock musician, as a rock vocalist, with the capacity, the skills, sometimes simple skills, sometimes also master skills. But there is a difference between me as a rock vocalist, a musician, a professional rock vocalist to whatever degree, and rock cult. You see, I have been known to very much love rock cult as a whole, and to identify myself also being called Legolassie, as adhering to emo cult. You see, I think, and that's a general statement, I think every colleague will be able to oblige with, is there have been numbers of categorical faulters in that hindsight. I can love adhere to any whatever cult I like, as a person, as an individual. But as a musician, I'm a post-hardcore rock musician, not a heavy metal musician, not a thrash metal musician, not a nightcore. I'm a post-hardcore rock musician, you see. But for my personal rock cult, I consider myself to be emo cult. Now that has been having a problem in Belgium, I think rather in Belgium and maybe Holland than in the UK. It's very important to know, because in Belgium, rock cult has had the mindset also towards me and other persons in general rock music stage, that rock cult had, through Rock of the God or whatever other form, had the right to monitor, to control, between brackets freak, all rockers, including rock musicians. Now that is directly wrong. It's a very bad categorical falter, you see, because there's there's musicians, rock musicians, whatever kind of rock musicians, and you have rock cult. You have to keep these two separated. You have to keep these two apart. Rock cult and whatever form of social control is exerted from that rock cult cannot practice that control on rock musicians' life, you see, because rock cult, with every respect for the cult as such, does not know how rock musicians' context, circumstances are. He works on another level, which is different. It's not higher, it's another level from the rock cult level, and still rock cult level has the tendency to control and to monitor also rock musicians' life. You see, and that's something that definitely should have to be mentioned. And I think it's a problem which all rock life should take care of, so that rock musicians have their own life, and that no whatsoever rock culture, not of Rockers God, not of whatever kind of rock organization, meddles up or controls rock musicians' life, you see. So is what has been straining lots of rock musicians' personal life also. So please keep these things, these two categories apart. That's, for instance, that's the reason why fan bases are diligently asked to keep themselves apart from the personal situation of a rock musician, of a professional and professionalizing rock musician. So that is very important, I think, for us all. It has been mounting up in certain parts of rock history into situations where even rock musicians got attacked, also physically attacked or damaged because of their personal life. Whereas they are a separate category and cannot be seen from the context of a rock culture. So I have to emphatically make that clear. I think it's also a specific Belgian context, partly linked to certain criminalizing tendencies within rock cult, linked to maybe more rightish forms or tendencies in rock cult, alas. So I think I've given well, quite some explanation about who I am. Everyone, I hope so also, everyone knows I have been a monk for 18 years, 18.3 years to be exact. Of course, that influences one's maturity, one's spirituality. It will, and it has also, together with my classical background, influenced my rock vocalism up to any whatever degree, you see. But I still remain, as I am now, the poor, which is not a problem, you see, but okay, I don't have many tools to work with or to invest in. The foremost problem is the isolation I have to live under, which often piles tons of stress because of the hate clan, making it virtually impossible for any whatever person, except for very rare exceptions, to come and talk with me, to share things with me, to offer me a socializing life, a private life, because everything has been destroyed up into the very most basic needs. And this in a modern society like we are living in is virtually impossible. It should not be possible. It should never have been possible. But alas, that is what the situation is now today for me. It has started, and let's be serious about that. I was harassed also before when I was an LGBT activist. But it was foremost when I started out studying contemporary rock life, starting out studying lyrics, separate bands, making contact with online and sometimes live with contemporary rock cult. It's foremost at that point of time when I entered rock that the real problems, isolationist problems, started to emerge, and in a very diehard manner often, you see. So I think when people start to realize I started out in rock professionalizing mode, that has been with permission of the unemployment agency, the Belgian unemployment agency. So also thereunder I am in an official protection for this originally side project, you see. So it's not just something I started out as a whim or something like that. But it's from that time on I have been dially isolated more than ever up and until now. So for everyone it's clear, I think that it was my entry into active rock music life, which made hate clans organize around me on the pretext that I would be involving in specifically and with I would call it malintent or manipulative intents into emo cult, being for the bigger part a teenage cult or young twins cult. And I think there the anxiety, the fear came in, that my real intent behind it all was to, to be a predator and to use the rock called pool for my own personal preferences, whatever it may be. So I'm not saying this is rock cult's fault, obviously. People who knew me before already, and from when I was a youth, no, I'm not like that, actually, which can be attested by every kind of virtual proof also. I won't go in depth on that. I don't think that is necessary. But the idea of a person between 45 and 50 entering modern post-hardcore rock music as a professional musician, and then that specific emo cult where mostly teenagers and twins are supposed to be involved. I think it is mostly because rock life and rock cultures, also professional persons, did not know me from before, and wrong signals and wrong brandings were put on my person towards people who never know me at all. So that was very cheap, very destructive, very cheap, very dishonest to the core. That is why, actually, that is why the communication should have been much more clearer between me and rock music cult and rock professional life. So that's why I mounted up this first live stream ever I did to explain a number of things which are quite important to me still. If I could give a message, it's not only about me, it's also, as I stated before, towards others or about other rock music profiles, rock professional profiles. Please don't let anyone focus you on something you could never know, or you could have never known. It's a very destructive, disastrous event, and you might up ending damaging not only the person, but everything which it might add up to its own musical or professional, whatever kind of life it may be. I think that is the most important message I can bring to you. So even if I never would get on stage, everything that has happened from 2013, about when I started out in rock music life, everything what happened from then on, despite my diehard labor in studying, in also contributing on all these email sites with musicology posts, etc. All these things were darkened and, as far as possible, destroyed by this strangling isolationist hate clan. So I think the message is quite clear towards one and every single person. And now it's not, to be honest, after 3 years of hard laboring, studying, practicing, it's definitely not up to me to change that situation with that kind of enormous pressure from outside, from a government who does not want or who cannot oblige any grants for elaborating musical tools, for people who does not want people to involve or invest in realization of a life that can contribute towards all and everyone in finality. So I think that's the major message. I hope you were able to capture that, to cope with that. And so that's where I stop for now with the context and with the information I wanted to give, to pass on to you. So you might know how deep the isolation has been because of me investing in a professional rock music life, investing with all I have in my poor, impoverished situation, despite my double hernia back medical situation on top of that, and me having vitiligo also.